live. People, hello guys, hello guys, hello guys, hello guys, hello guys, hello guys. Please like and share, please like and share, please like and share. Peace and love. Today we're gonna talk about the children of white people amongst us. We're gonna talk about the children of white people amongst us, the descendants of Europeans in native societies. We have John Dunn here and the Zulu chief Mdwana udabula amanzi. Nangu uJantoni ehleli phansi nodabula amanzi eqabela ihashe. Sizongena namhlanje on the whites who are black, the black Europeans in South Africa. But I'm just gonna play one song and then yeah, we go at it. Sanibona. Budan. Hello. Mina Sanibona, Butani, Dumelang, Endaba Remene. Hello guys, hello guys, hello guys. Today I want to talk about an interesting topic. We are white. We are white. Singabelungu. There's a group of people there in the Eastern Cape known as Abelungu. As you can see here at the bottom of this photo, it says of Abelungu clan. This gentleman right here belongs to Abelungu. He belongs to the Abelungu people. We're gonna look at the history of Abelungu. Who are these people? Where are they coming from? Not just Abelungu, but we're gonna actually do a series on descendants of Europeans. We're gonna do a series on descendants of Europeans because it's not just one group. There are many groups in many different provinces. On my previous lives, we had touched on the descendants of Arabs and some Jewish families in places like Limpopo, Mozambique. We spoke about the Salifa people, or the people who descend from the Yemeni merchants, Al Salif. We spoke about the Suleimani, the people who come from the Al Suleiman. In Mozambique, we know they are descendants of Omani merchants. I mean, the name Mozambique itself comes from an Omani merchant called Musa ibn Bikwe. So, I mean, there's clear evidence that people of other races came to Africa, came to Southern Africa. Many of them mixed with the local communities and ended up, having descendants. And we can see it with the Jews, with the Arabs, with the Yemenis. Some of them are Jews, some of them are Arabs, with the Omanis and different groups. It is inevitable when groups of people meet, there's going to be mating. It still happens to this day. Today, it's not an abnormal thing to see young kids. But, you can never be sure. If they are Xhosa or Zulu, they could be Igbo. Young children could be Igbo today. They could be, Tutsi today. Because they could be Somali. They could be Ethiopian, Amara, because their fathers could have come from those places, or their mothers. It's inevitable when groups of humans come together. Mixing happens. Now, one thing that's very barely spoken about is the mixing of Europeans into indigenous African societies in South Africa. It's Europeans who are joining indigenous societies and not the other way around. We'll look at some of these people. Not all of them, but some of them. We'll look at groups known as Abelungu. This gentleman right here comes from the tribe known as Abelungu, which is roughly translated to the whites. But obviously, if we go to the etymology, Abelungu does not mean the whites. This gentleman comes from the group known as Abelungu. This is one of the groups I'm going to explore today. There's another group known as Amamolo. We're going to explore that group today. Dumelang, Molweni. Then there's another group known as Ama-Ogle and Ama-Kane, which means the Ogles and the Canes. Clearly English descendants. But these people, you find them amongst Xhosa-speaking and Zulu-speaking communities, and even like some colored communities as well. But also beyond that, there's a couple of families that I know personally, besides reading about them. I'm going to mention the Dawkins family. They were originally from Pondoland. I know the Ross Kruger family. They were also from Pondoland. And then there's the Spalding family. And these ones are particularly descendants of traders. The Dawkins, the Ross Kruger, and the Spaldings. There's a big church there in the Eastern Cape, or maybe like a famous church known as Indaba Zosindiso. People call it Mamu Spalding. Mamu Spalding She was a saint. She's a saint, I think, of the Anglican Church or Methodist. I'm not sure which church. But yeah, her last name was Spalding. So the Spaldings, the Ogles, the Canes, they came into indigenous society, into Amaxhosa, Amazulu. They mixed with those people. They bore descendants. Some of those descendants today are Zulu. Some of those descendants today maybe Mpondo. Some of those descendants today are colored, you know. Another very famous of the white pioneers is this man in the picture here that these descendants of his are holding. These are the descendants of John Donne, or as in KZN he is known as Jantoni. John Donne was a descendant of settlers. These settlers had come to the Cape Colony in the Eastern Cape in a place that was known as Port Elizabeth, today known as Gqeberha. The father of John Donne was a settler in Gqeberha. In fact, John Donne himself had a wife when he went to KZN. He already had a wife who was of mixed heritage herself. So she could have been Xhosa mixed with European or something along those lines. So the wife of John Donne was of mixed heritage. John Donne went to KZN with his father at a time where there was a battle. He was on the losing side, of course, but he ended up befriending the Zulu royal family, you know, in the time of Ucetshwayo, Ntabulamanzi and the others. John Donne is known as having taken a lot of wives. Some people say 50 wives, some people say 60 wives, some say even 25 wives. The fact is that he took a lot of wives. We can definitely say more than 20 who were Zulu wives from different regions. He took more than 20 wives, John Donne, from different regions of KZN. And then he was given a piece of land along the Tukela River to settle. And he settled there, and then he built a clan of his own people. Some people say he was a chief. Inkosi John Donne. Yo, Inkosi Jantoni. So some people say John Donne was a chief. I don't know that. I'm not interested in that either. But the interesting thing to me is that the people who are holding this frame, you can clearly see that they are his descendants. They are his descendants. Some identify as Zulu, some identify as colored, some probably are just the children of John Donne. And the Dans are quite a numerous clan. Eh? They are known as the Dans. But the Dans are not an anomaly. They are part of a bigger thing that has been happening since the 1400s. Europeans have been joining indigenous societies since the 1400s. Now, the beautiful thing about our indigenous cultures, whether Zulu, Xhosa, Mpondo, Bumvana, etc., we don't classify according to race. We classify according to clan. So when these Europeans, whether they're shipwreck survivors or they're traders, when they come and take women from our clans or our nations or our polities, and they take these women, they marry them, and then settle amongst the people with those women, the descendants need to belong to some clan. They need to belong to a clan. This clan is important because it's what informs us of the proceedings to observe when the child is born. The clan name is important because it's what informs us of the proceedings when there's a traditional ceremony, then there's a ritual in the family. So that's how then we were able to maintain this history of the people of European origin who came and joined our nation. But let's take it a bit further back now. So I showed this picture of this gentleman here. His name is Mlungisi. This is Mlungisi Hona. His last name is Hona. Horner. Mlungisi Hona, his clan name is Mlungu. His clan name is Mlungu. It's a new clan name that was formed possibly in the 1500s, if not early 1600s. Abelungu. He comes from the Abelungu people, but then the Abelungu themselves have got different branches within them. They are not all just Abelungu. There are Abelungu from different branches. But who are the Abelungu? Who are the Abelungu? So we have one Abelungu of the Jekwa last name. They are known as the Jekwa people. We have the Abelungu of the Hona last name. Abelungu Hona, just like this gentleman here. We've got Amamolo. You see, Amamolo, the Molo people, or some people say the Maroons. Some people say the Moors. These are groups of people known as Abelungu / Amamolo. We have Abelungu Fuzwayo or Abelungu Baka Fuzwayo. So it's not just one mega group of Abelungu. No, there's Abelungu Hona, the descendants of Hona, Abelungu Fuzwayo, Abelungu Hatu, Abelungu Jekwa. These are the different groups of Abelungu. All of them descend from Europeans who came to South Africa through ships, were shipwrecked along the wild coast of the Eastern Cape or the coast of KZN, came and joined our societies and formed clans. So let's hear now, who are the Abelungu and what is their story? See, Abelungu, you will find them in places like Xhosa, which is close to what is known as Coffee Bay today. You will find Abelungu in places like Cwebe, Ebelungwini, or Khasa. All these places are in the Wild Coast. You will also find Abelungu in places like next to Lwandle River, Emampondweni, in places like Chani, next to Mthatha River, in villages like Maphuzi, in villages like Enchilini, in a village known as Emamolweni, because they are called Amamolo, in a village also known as Nkanunu, and other villages. So along the Mthatha River area, going upwards all the way towards Port St. John's, but also along the Xhosa River and Mbashe River, because this is where these ships used to be shipwrecked. So they would be shipwrecked here back in the 1500s, and then they would crawl into the villages and seek help. So the original Abelungu is not some one group of people. I repeat, the original Abelungu are not some related group of people. Abelungu were travelers who traveled together on ships from Portugal. These are travelers, they were on the same ship from Portugal, but they're not necessarily related to themselves. Hence, within the Abelungu clan, they specify, are you Abelungu Hona, like this gentleman, Utatumlungu is Hona? Are you Abelungu Jekwa? Are you Abelungu Fuzwayo? Are you Abelungu Hatu? Or are you Amamolo? Which means they know all these are different bloodlines. They are not related, these people. These were Europeans, Portuguese, English, who were in the same ships. They are just called Abelungu together, but they are differentiated. So it's not one big clan. We know Abelungu bakwa Jekwa and bakwa Hatu. And they're in different locations as well, all along the coast though. Now, we have to understand that the Abelungu of Hona, they are actually descendants. They are descendants of Alfred Hona, a person known as Alfred Hona. Then there's a group of people known as Abelungu, Amamolo as well. Now, these are said to have been possibly Maroons, if not Moors. Hence the name Molo. I'm sold on Maroons. Thank you, observer. I'm sold on the identity that they were actually Maroons, not Moors. I think they were Maroons because in our culture, we don't pronounce, when we transliterate names, we can't pronounce something that's not a syllable. Like when you say more, it's more. Why would you say molo? It's more. So that's just not a theory that I'm going to go by. So with these Abelungu people now, people like Opland in 1983 wrote about them. Hammond Tuke wrote about them in 1968. These clans, as I had mentioned, are found along from Mbashe River all the way to Mtata River. You see, there's Mpashe River there in the bottom left. You go, there's Tocha River. You go, there's Mtata River. And as you go up, there's Luandle River. All the dots, the purple, the violet, the brown, the turquoise, the green, all those dots are different groups of Abelungu. These are descendants of Europeans who are Xhosa speaking today. They could be part of AmaXhosa. Some of them are part of Amabomvana. Some of them are part of Amampondo. But all of them are from European forefathers. They don't have indigenous male ancestors. Not at all. So these are actual Europeans. According to our culture, these are Europeans. Now, these people say their ancestors came from ships. They say it themselves. But we also know it because we know there were many shipwrecks along the Wild Coast and the coast of KZN. I'll keep on mentioning this. Since the 1500s, thank you, Kumkan, there were many shipwrecks along the Wild Coast and the coast of KZN. And it's these shipwrecks that the survivors of these shipwrecks, some of them did not have the wherewithal and the will. They did not have the wherewithal and the will to walk all the way to Delagoa Bay or the Cape Colony. They just didn't have it in them. So they decided, look, let's just become Xhosa, let's just become Zulu. But before I go any deeper on the Amamolo people, I want to share with you a story. When we talk about European descendants, I'm not talking about people who decide to take a culture of Europeans, because that's mostly all of us nowadays. Almost every indigenous person in this country has taken the culture of Europeans. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about people whose fathers were white, or both their parents were white. So I'm going to play a short clip for you about a group of people known as they are known as the Black Afrikaners. They are from a place here in South Africa, these people. But let me play it quickly, the Black Afrikaners, and then we'll continue.
Dis 'n klein gemeenskap en die is hulle erfgrond en bloedgrond. Onverwagters het dit vir 'n appel en 'n ei by oud-president Paul. Die titel Swart Afrikaners is egter allerminstens.
You see, they're calling them the Swart Afrikaners. They are the Swart Afrikaners.
Skeldnaam, dis hulle trots.
Ons het Afrikaans op in die kombuise geleer. En so het ons Afrikaans nou vir oor die 100 jaar, 113 jaar.
This is Hofrou Petronella Machobane. She's a Black Afrikaner. She's a Swart Afrikaner.
Wat ons Afrikaans. Die manier ons was goed was, die manier ons kerk gaan. Ja, Afrikaans. Ons is trots om die Swart Afrikaners te wees.
Ja, ons noem ons Afrikaners. Want wat vertaal gaan ons gebruik?
This is Daina Khutego and Sophie Tau. You see, they've got Sesotho or Tswana surnames, but then they are called the Swart Afrikaners.
Waar gaan ons inpas? Ja. Ek is lief vir 'n blomtuin, ek is lief vir 'n groentetuin, ek is lief vir die buitelewe. Ek hou van 'n plaaslewe. Ek hou nie van die dorplewe. Ek het 16 jaar
Ek het nou vir mevrou Skutte gesê, ek dink ek gaan maar terug plaas toe.
Sy is dalk al 75 jaar oud, maar ouma Dina werskaf nog gereeld hier in haar kombuis. Ouma, wat is van ouma se gunsteling kossoort?
As ek nou reg my regte kos wil kook, as ek 'n bietjie af wil gedwaal van dit, dan is dit my Transvaal pudding.
Wat is Transvaal pudding, ouma?
Mieliemeelpap.
Die onverwagters kla wel hier is al hoe meer plakkers en intrekkers van buurland.
Yeah. So these are the Swart Afrikaners. Or the Black Afrikaners, as they call themselves. There's a story behind them. They are not just like crazy black people who hate themselves necessarily. So these people actually they were with the Afrikaners they were with the four trekkers in the right, It's actually approximately about 100 families, probably more now. Approximately about 100 families. They identify as Afrikaners. They were settled in the 1800s in the settlement of Onverwacht, in the mining town of Cullinan. Yabon. So they descend from slaves, actually. Freed slaves who were freed. They were actually slaves of the four trekkers. These people were slaves of the four trekkers. You know the four trekkers? The forward marchers. The forward marchers. The pioneers, as they call themselves. Nonsense. So these people were slaves of the four trekkers. Now, they could have been Sotho, they could have been Tswana, it doesn't matter. But they were slaves of the four trekkers. It's crazy that they still identify as the swart Afrikaners to this day. So I thought maybe I should mention that as an honorable mention, because you know, we are talking about descendants of Europeans. These ones are not descendants of Europeans. They are actually not descendants of Europeans. They are very much black people. It's just that they were actually enslaved. You understand? They were enslaved, and therefore they ended up losing their own identity and ended up taking the identity of the Afrikaners. Hence, they are called the Swart Afrikaners. They practice Afrikaner culture or Afrikaner slave culture. Everything they do is Afrikaner. Now, let's go back to the Amamolo people who are a branch of Abelungu. The Amamolo people are a branch of Abelungu. I'm trying to find decent photos here. Let me look if I have any screenshots. This is Irish. This one is from the Irish descendants. He's a member of the Irish descendants. He's a member of the Irish descendants. Let's see. Anyway, it's fine. I'll put this one. These are also Abelungu. Within Abelungu, there's a group of people known as Amamolo. Now, Amamolo have oral traditions. They tell us who they are. Now, there's a book that was written back in the day in the 1930s, right? This book comes from oral accounts of the Amamolo peoples. These are descendants of Europeans. I repeat, thank you, Nondwaiza. Thank you so much. They say that the founder of their clan, of the Amamolo clan, is a person known as Bai. Bai is a founder of their clan, right? That's what they're saying, that the founder is a man called Bai, which means that would be the original European, their ancestor. It could be the man who came with the sheep or the father of the man who came with the sheep. So they say Bai is their original ancestor. And it's crazy to me because we have a clan known as Abantu Bakwa Bai, and nobody really knows where they come from. They are part of the Amavudle and Amamvulane, but these two groups, sometimes they say these people are not our people. They came through the female line. So it's like they married into our clan and took the clan name. So that's just an interesting thing to me to say about Obai, but I don't support that. But I've heard it before. Anyway, Amamolo, the descendants of the Europeans who came, say the Amamolo branch, the original ancestor, is a person called Bai. He is called Bai. But there's another oral account that says, no, Bai actually comes from another man called Jaflit or Jafilita. Now, these would be Portuguese names, most likely. Jafiliti, Bai, they would have to be Portuguese names, or at least in some Romance language. Bai was the son of Jafiliti. Jafiliti was the son of Kumkati. And this is the progenitor of the Amamolo clan. This is the oldest European they can trace themselves back to. Kumkati, who gave birth to Jaflita. Jaflita gave birth to Bai. I think Bai is the one who arrived in South Africa. Bai had about 5 sons or 6 sons. These 6 sons, the first one was called Poto. The second one was called Mgolwana. The third one was called Mnyuli. The fourth one was called Mgacheni. The fifth one was called Falteni. Mgacheni or Mgareni and Falteni were twins. And the sixth one was called Nyange. These 6 children belong to Ubai. Bai being the grandson of Kumkati, the progenitor of the European Amamolo. And now from this group, there's many descendants that come. Many descendants like Majundana, Mkhaga, Mabazelo, etc., etc. I'm not going to go into the details. I just wanted to say, these people have a clear understanding, guessing it. They know where they come from by the son of Jalflita, the son of Kumkat. So when we say these are European descendants, it's not a claim. It's a fact. It's an established fact. They come from some shipwreck that happened in the early 1700s or late 1600s. You see? So this is the oral history that we know. This is the oral history that we know. And then now, Jafliti himself, actually, he's said to have had 2 children instead. He's said to have had 2 children. Bai, who married a woman called Priscilla. Bai married a woman called Priscilla and gave birth to Poto. Poto gave birth to Majundana and Skotoi. Majundana gave birth to Mkhaga and Julius and Baulese. And then Mkhaga gave birth to Nowansu. Nowansu gave birth to Bojana. Bojana gave birth to Mhlabunzima. And I think that's the last known one. These are descendants of Jafliti, who is a descendant of Kumkati. Either some Maroons who came with the Portuguese ship. They could have been Indian. They could have been Indonesian. They could have been Caribbean. Based on the name Amamolo, it's likely they were Maroons. You see now, the Amamolo even know that they were shipwreck survivors. In fact, it is said that there was even one woman within Amamolo. There was one woman, but we don't know the name of this woman, but we do know that there was a woman who was part of the shipwreck survivors, which would mean this woman now was married into an indigenous man, and they also gave birth to children. Now, this gives us another layer to say Amamolo are probably 90% European fathers, 10% indigenous fathers. And this is the group of people known as Amamolo. They are part of a group known as Abelungu. They are part of a group known as Abelungu. Amamolo is the first branch. The second branch of Amamolo are a group of Abelungu known as Abelungu Bagwajekwa. Abelungu Jekwa. That's the branch they come from. Abelungu Jekwa. Now, these people, they come from 3 men, but they were actually descendants. They were descendants of people who were shipwrecked on the Lambasi River. You see now, it's a completely different group from Amamolo. The Abelungu Bagwajekwa come from descendants of shipwreck survivors on the Lambasi River, on the Wild Coast again. They say they know 3 men and 1 girl. The 3 men were called Jekwa, Bati, and Hatu. Now, we would have to go and investigate the probable name, Jekwa. We would have to go and investigate what is Jekwa. Is it Jacques? We don't know. What is Bati? What is Hatu? But those are the 3 names that were recorded. And then there was 1 girl. There was 1 girl. Her name was called Uma, but her presumed original name was Bessie. So Jekwa, Bati, and Hatu and Bessie were all Europeans who came from this ship that was shipwrecked in Lambasi River. They all came from this ship. They were Emampondweni, in the mixing of Mampondo and Mabumvana. These people, there was even a book that was written about the girl Kuma or Bessie. There's a book that was written about her. It's called Sunburnt Queen. It was written by Crampton in 2004. Sunburnt Queen. Now, I have my reservations of classifying this shipwrecked girl a queen. I think they've exaggerated her standing in the Mpondo community. She's a shipwreck survivor who was married by one of the princes. Now, what Europeans don't want to understand is that this prince was not the heir of Amampondo. So this was not the king. And therefore, this girl could not have been a queen. She was a princess now because of marriage. You can't marry a prince who's not a king and say you're a queen. You're only a queen if you marry the king. Uquma, aka Bessie, the shipwrecked survivor girl who was with Jekwa, Hatu, and Bati, she was not a queen of Amampondo. She was a wife of Chomane, of the Amachomane people. Amachomane are an indigenous clan within Amampondo. Sometimes you find them amongst Amabomvan. Uchomane, he was not some he did not run any kingdom. He was just a prince. Just like kings have many wives, they will have many sons. And only one of those sons is the heir. The one who's the heir is the son of the senior wife. If the senior wife fails to bear an heir, the supporting wife of the senior wife, known as Iqadi Lendlunkulu, she's the one who's literally gonna give birth to the heir for the senior wife. So we are not some lawless group of people. We had a very clear law on how one becomes a king. So the girl Guma, which means roar, like the roaring sea, was then married into the Chomani people, and then obviously they gave birth to children. In fact, if you go to these regions in Eastern Cape and KZN, if you go to these regions, I can promise you, you will see clear evidence from the people who stay there that, yeah, these people are Europeans' children. Even to this day, like it's very much there. Like the one I showed you here, the child of John Donne, or the descendant of John Donne. It's very clear. You just have to look at them. You see, these are descendants of John Donne, the Zulu chief who had 25 wives. Some say 50 wives. So it's very clear. It's not something that like it's in the remote past. It's visible. Like here, this one is a descendant of Abelung Bakwahona. That's very visible. These people are not Khoi. They are not First Nation. There is no First Nation in South Africa to begin with. People claim to be First Nation and Aboriginal. That's not true. There are no First Nation and there are no Aboriginal, because the whole idea of First Nation is a copycat. These people copied what they saw in Australia, what they saw in New Zealand and in Latin America, the reference to the indigenous communities there. But those communities are not they're not necessarily related to each other. They are just people who were living peacefully before Europeans arrived. And therefore they are called first people because they were there before Europeans arrived. They are not called first people because they were before some other group. They are called first people purely because they were there first before the Europeans. It doesn't mean that those people themselves are related or they've got some primacy claim over everything in the world. So here in South Africa, people take the First Nation label, forcefully so, by the way, because they are not First Nation. They take it and then they use it without any context, purely driven by apartheid collaborative mindset, because a lot of them are descendants of apartheid and colonialist invaders. A lot of them are descendants of collaborators, natives who collaborated, unaliving their own people. So they are still driven by the same undertones to say, no, we were first here. We are anything but these blacks. We can't be black, we must be brown. We can't be African, we must be First Nation. You understand? It's a self-defeating, counterintuitive thing to do to yourself. Anyway, back to Abelungu. So the first Abelungu that I discussed was the Abelungu of Jekwa. No, was the Amamolo and then Abelungu of Jekwa. These are the descendants of three men: Jekwa, Bati, Hatu, and one girl, Kuma. The girl, it's easy. She married the prince. They gave birth to children. Those children still exist to this day. The features are still very visible to this day. Now, the three men, Jekwa, Bati, and Hatu, they gave birth like this. According to Jekwa, he had a father called Bombose. Which is why I believe that these people are possibly Portuguese, man. Bombose gave birth to Jekwa. Jekwa gave birth to Mbayela. Mbayela gave birth to Nogaya. And then Noga gave birth to Nomkhosho. Nomkhosho gave birth to Zali. This is one line. Another line, Jekwa gave birth to Malanga, who gave birth to Kweha, who gave birth to Mkolelo. And it goes all the way down. It goes all the way down. It's beautiful because the people who come from these people still remember. They still remember their ancestors. They still honor their ancestors to this day. And they have clan names, they've got clan praises, and they practice indigenous culture to this day. And I like that. Now, the third group of Abelungu is the group of Abelungu of the Hona, of the Hatu, of Hatu. Hatu gave birth to Nyaka and Madlo. And then after Nyago, there were two children, Kobe and Madigane. In fact, you can find all of this history in a research that was done. It's called We Are White, Xhosa Oral History. You can just go and search for it. We Are White, Xhosa Oral History. I'm not going to go to each and every one of them. But I'm just demonstrating that this is not hearsay. There's actual written evidence and physical evidence. You can see the people in the photos. But the last group of Abelungu are the Abelungu of Hona, like the men you can see on the screen. These people, they come from a man called Henry. These are English now. These are English descendants. I mean, the surname is a dead giveaway, Hona. They come from a man called Henry. Henry gave birth to a son called Alfred Hona. Alfred is the one who was shipwrecked into the Eastern Cape. Alfred married a woman who comes from a clan known as Imiganu. Imiganu is a clan of Amabomvana. They are Mganu Nchinchise. That's the group of people that Alfred Hona married. Therefore, through Imiganu, gave birth to a son called Johnson Hona, and a son called George Hona, and a son called Ramsey Hona, and a son called Teddy Hona, and a son called Reggie Hona. These are descendants of Alfred Hona. And then Johnson Hona gave birth to Jack Hona. Jack Hona therefore gave birth to Mlungisi and Temba. You see now, they are losing the English language already. And they married indigenous women over and over and over again. But the beautiful thing is that you can clearly see the features. In fact, there's a man I know who was my neighbor growing up. This gentleman, he was Peterson. That's his surname. He looked exactly like this man on this photo. He was of the Peterson people. He looked exactly like this man on the photo. His name was Simon Peterson. But he's Xhosa. Mara, you can see the looks. This one come from the Dutch. Or from the English. And Tina, we're not racist about it. Like, we don't beat these people around. They are part of us now. But we know who they are. Just like we pointed it out with the Lemba people who come from the Salif, Al-Salif and Al-Suleiman, who come from the Cohen house, the Sena, the Shaba. You see? Like Malema. You know Malema come from the Bashabi. He's a Mushabi. Go and search the Shabise name. Shabise name in Yemen, Shabise name in Palestine is there. It's there. So we know who these people are. We already know. So when people talk about race mixing or admixture, we know who is the mixed race people. It's not all of us. It's like maybe 2% of the people. Anyway, let's move. These are the descendants of shipwreck survivors. But perhaps, let's bring it closer to home. Let's go to a group of people known as the Ogles. They are known as the Ogles or Ama Ogle. Now, the Ogles descend from a man called John. No, not John, but Henry Ogle. Henry Ogle. Henry Ogle is the progenitor of the Ogle people. He was actually born in Yorkshire, England. He was born in Yorkshire, England, United Kingdom, and he died in KZN, Pietermaritzburg. Now, the history says, originally the Ogles settled in Gqeberha, in the Cape Colony. They settled in Gqeberha, and then John Ogle, no, he married actually a woman. He married a woman there in Gqeberha who was of mixed heritage. Could have been a Xhosa mixed with a European, could have been a Xhosa mixed with, could be whatever, doesn't matter. Henry Ogle, they go and move to KZN. They move to KZN, and this is where they start to and the Dans, like John Dan, they move to KZN, and this is where they spread. Now, these ones were not shipwreck survivors. These were settlers, English settlers, the Ogles. In the Eastern Cape, they are known as Ama Ogle. It's used as a clan name for some of them. They are known as Ama Ogle. Hello, Imani. Hello, Imani. Imani is a descendant of Europeans as well. Feel free to join the panel because I'm going to talk about your people just now. You want to share a thing or two. So, the oral genealogy tells us that John obviously had a woman called Hannah, and then Henry was born, and then Henry gave birth to more sons like Henry, John, George, and Chaka. And then Chaka gave birth to Louis, and the line goes on and on and on. But then there's another line of descent where Ogle gives birth to Ngwevu. Ngwevu gives birth to Frank. Frank gives birth to Ndoda. Ndoda gives birth to Hlomela. Another line, Frank gives birth to Mnyaiza. It's crazy because I know a man called Mnyaiza here in the Eastern Cape. Here in the Eastern Cape, Frank also gives birth to Mpuku. You see? So there's many, these people there are many. These are pure European descendants. Now, the mothers, obviously, they're intermixing with other cultures, but this is not a history that we threw away. We understood this history, we kept it because it's part of our history. The exact same thing applies to John Donne. This is John Donne's grave. You can see him there wearing European clothing in that grave. He's seated there with the Zulu chiefs, Inkosi, Induna or Inkosi. The Dans, the people of John Donne, Abakwa Jantoni. Now, these ones, I think they're even more numerous. The people of John Donne, I think, are even more numerous in numbers. Many people. Some, I think many of them today may be classified as colored, but I'm sure some, they still maintain their Zulu heritage as well. Now, big problem for these people of European descent. When apartheid really started to take root, they had to choose a side. They had to either be black or be colored. Some of them had to choose a side, maybe to be white. So I think most of the descendants of Europeans through apartheid ended up being separated. And some of them, fortunately, did try to, reconnect after apartheid. So John Donne is the one who married many, many Zulu wives. John Donne, I think his family also were from the Eastern Cape originally. But had settled in the Eastern Cape originally. And then they moved over to KZN. He was first on the losing side, but then he found favor with Nkosi Cetshwayo. And since then he started to work together with the Zulu family. Some say he was an advisor. Some say he was a counselor in terms of trade. He was advising the king in terms of trade. But I know John Donne was very close to the royal family. Very close. In fact, I have a picture of John Donne and Utabula Manzi learning to ride a horse. Yabon? On the bottom picture, there's John Donne right there. There's John Donne right there. And then on the top picture, you can see Utabula Manzi. People say he was taught by John Donne. I don't know about that. I was not there. But there's very clear evidence John Donne or Ujantoni was heavily involved in indigenous society. In fact, one thing I would like to tell you guys is that a lot of the times, because we view history from a colonial lens, we never think about how did the indigenous people receive these changes that are happening at that time. How did the indigenous people process these changes that are happening with Europeans arriving, with Europeans getting involved in their society? How did the indigenous people operate? For example, we call this man John Donne, but the indigenous people called him Jantoni. There's another man called Harry Smith in the Eastern Cape. He was not called Harry Smith. He was called Sakwiti. We know Shepstein as well. He was not called Shepstein. He was called Usomtsewu. And many, many other Europeans actually were given indigenous names. And this is the mindset we must get into when we think about history. Not from the perspective of the writer, but from the perspective of the person who was already there when the European arrived. We know some of the, I mentioned yesterday, during the wars of resistance, which I'm going to be discussing in length in the next few lives. During the wars of resistance, some of the fighters had Afrikaans names, Dutch names. For example, there was a resistance fighter called Henry Matros. But in isiXhosa, Henry Matros did not exist. I mean, there are people to this day. To this day, there are people who have a surname in isiXhosa. Matilose. It's actually Matros. There are Xhosa people to this day with the surname Matilose. And there are Xhosa people with the surname Makeleni. Makeleni is McKellen. It's McKellen. It was a colonel, a colonel. There are Xhosa people with the surname Makinan. It's McKinnon. Colonel John McKinnon. These were soldiers, European soldiers. Some gave birth to children, but some of the names were because the parents maybe, just thought I could name my child this. Some of the fighters, Henry Matros, he was called Ngokumeshe. Henry Matros was called Ngokumeshe. And next to Henry Matros, there was another fighter, a resistant fighter who fought Europeans. His name was Willem Eidhalter. Willem Eidhalter. All of them had indigenous names. So Uchantonige as well. And as people people are confirming in the comments, he had many Zulu wives. Definitely more than 20 wives. There's no doubt about that. More than 20 wives. Some people exaggerate. They say he had 60 wives. Some people he had 25. Some people he had 30. It doesn't matter. He had more than 20. And therefore he had more than 100 children. First generation. More than 100 children. And therefore they became a clan. I think Ibeka niggas were a piece of land. He was once given a piece of land along the banks of Utugel. Yes, during Isandlwana, he sided with the English. He was on the losing side. But I think later his mind must have awoken. But also Uchantoni tried to sort of like prevent, in a way, to convince Amazulu to not fight. He tried to convince Amazulu to not fight. Thank you, Ndabezita. Thank you guys for the gifts. He tried to convince Amazulu to not fight. And this is the kind of history we need to unearth now. We have to unearth. And these clans must be clans. There must be real clans, not just last names. Like we know, Uzulu is a real Sisbongo. A real Sisbongo. Amamfene Sisbongo. Abakwanqobo Sisbongo. Abakwadlamini Sisbongo. The people who descend from these people need to actually have an identity within indigenous societies. The Dans must be the Dans. The Ogles must be the Ogles. The Canes must be the Canes. So John Donne and his descendants are part of another group known as the Ogles and the Canes. So the Dans, the Ogles, and the Canes, the Dans, the Ogles, and the Canes are all descendants of Europeans of English heritage. And these three people, John Donne, John Kane, and Henry Ogle, their families, and the Finns as well, their families knew each other, these people, and intermarried within each other. And the descendants as well. Interesting, Yabona, Finn. Even there in Eastern Cape, we have a lot of Finns there. There's even a village called Kwafeni. We have a village called Kwafeni there. So Henry Ogle, I think his other name was Wohlo. He was called Wohlo. As John Dan Beba Chantone. Now, there's another group of people known as the Dawkins. The Dawkins are descendants of European trader. But I'm going to allow Imani to tell his side of the story because he's a descendant of the Dawkins. I had invited another friend of mine called, he's from the Roskruger. The Roskrugers are also descendants. They are Celtic peoples. They are Celtic descendants originally. So I had invited him. I think if he does get a chance, he will join. Maybe some other time. Brother Imani, how are you doing?
Brother Sandile.
I'm good. Do you want to maybe talk to us about who you are? Go for it. Don't mind. Just go for it.
Okay, so I'm Imani Dokan, currently 20 years old. So my journey with my family tree lineage started as a little boy, you know, always wondering about where I come from and the different ethnic groups like in the family. So
Yeah.
I started with research and finding out about our ancestry. Because in colored families, I think my biggest concern or worry was there was always mention about white people within the family, right? And I got to a point whereby I asked Makul, why is it that there's this colorism within? And let's be honest about it at times, because that's what bothered me at times, whereby there would be this colorism or that we talked about it last time.
Yes.
Always wanting to associate ourselves with white and Khoi, which was the most of the cases that you see, whereby family or lineage is now used as a politicized tool nowadays. It's no more a thing whereby it makes us unique. So with my story, the Dawkins are from the Eastern Cape, place called Lusikisiki. So how the Dawkins came about is, remember we shared from the 1830s. The Cape Frontier Wars, I think it was the Xhosas and the British were fighting against land.
Yeah.
So the Dawkins came in the 1830s, settled in Grahamstown, and from there, the first Dawkins was from Ireland in a place called Kiltoom. So the Dawkins married a colored lady, Mary MacDonald, and from that marriage, there was Samuel Sidney Dawkins, also known as waMadzikane. As we also discussed that these people were given native names.
Yeah.
Yes, he was raised in Lusikisiki. So waMadzikane had children born out of wedlock from uMamVemve, uMagasela, and that's my lineage, if I'd have to put it in that way.
So you come from an Irish background with
Yes.
indigenous admixture. Yes, it's Irish people who also married, obviously, an indigenous woman from Ogasela. Now, one thing about abantu bakwaGasela ke, the omamvemve abo, they are actually known as Amazocho. I will tell the history of Amazocho someday, but basically the queer part comes from Amazocho. You see, it's crazy to me that people who are obsessed with colorism and racism want to claim queer ancestry, and they think being black, so-called, distances them from queer ancestry. But that's what actually associates them with queer ancestry. You don't have to not be black to be queer. These two are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they are one and the same. Anyway, tell us a bit more about your ancestor. Go all the way to where they were settled. Did they have any relationship with the Mpondos, the Mpondo kings? And maybe you can also touch on some of the families you know, like the Strachens, the Smalls, the Spaldings. But first, your bloodline, nje. I want you to touch on waMadzikane, the people you used to mention before I can interject.
So Baba waMadzikane, who was Joshua Dawkins, he was born in Grahamstown in 1844. based on my research, he
Yes.
moved down to Egauteng, the Great Place, which have been considered KwaZulu. And then from there, he settled in Ntubane, Sikisiki. And that's where he married a colored lady, Umaria McDonald, from Ntubane or Palmerton side. We're not really sure about her whereabouts. So Joshua Dawkins was a gunsmith to the paramount chief, who would have been, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the grandfather to Botasqau and the father to Machilan.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
the Dawkins was seen as outlaws or considered as outlaws by the British government at that time. And remember one thing about the small community of colored people from Lusikisiki is that they were all intermarried. Like there was Scrooge families, the Canhams, the Dawkins, the Finns as well were in Lusikisiki. Some of our Finns were in Lusikisiki. Some of them you find in Durban as well. The Canes and the Ogles as well. The Ogles would have fallen under the Abelungu clan, I believe, as well. And all these smaller clans that we have, and the Canhams as well. So the Canhams are all normally known as Abokanana, and there's a place called Kwakanana in Lusikisiki, which is the Canham homestead as well.
All right. So your family were considered outlaws because you guys were obviously not obeying the British authorities.
Yes.
You were
sold
busy.
and they sold and manufactured guns for the Mpondo people.
Yeah.
It was official gunsmith to Joshua.
Yes. That's amazing, man. That's amazing. And I think I remember he also gave your people land as well, isn't it?
Yes. He did
So
indeed give them land. That's also on the archives.
oh, that's good.
Documentation.
Nah, that's very good history, man. You know, being gunsmiths would have been very important in those days. And I understand why the British would want to label you guys as outlaws because, arming the indigenous people of the Eastern Cape meant the highest level of resistance to the British. It felt like, you were sentencing them to death when you are arming the indigenous people. But, it's amazing that you mentioned other families like the Roscrouge, the Canhams, also known as Abantu Wakanana, because we see people with these last names. We don't realize sometimes how far their history goes. We see people with these last names. We don't know how far their history goes. The Ogles, the Canes. I mean, heck, it goes as far as the Saunders as well. So I just wanted you to come in. It's all right. You can drop if you want. I wanted you to come in to show the people that when we talk about these things, they are very real. It's not something that was heard. It's not my hem. It's very real stuff. What I will be doing is I'm gonna be making like YouTube, like proper YouTube videos, like long form YouTube videos dedicated to specific families. So today I'm just introducing the subject, just introducing the subject that people are familiar, but there's going to be an entire series of documentaries where we'll use pictures, use marriage certificate, use written articles. But maybe before you drop, tell us about your ancestor, the one who fought in World War, and then I think he was classified as white, and then they classified him back to colored, and he didn't get any benefits.
Now that would be my great grandfather, who was Ubamba Tukubusha, but his name was Samuel Sidney Dawkins. So he was the first generation colored, let's put it that way. So he fought in the first South African Infantry. World War I documentations, I just had a look again. He fought in Belgium from the year 1917 to 1918. Was later discharged in 1919. Then came back home in Sukisiki and Subani. But at that time was living at Emateku. So another thing I also wanted to speak about is all these families as well, that they came from Hlubi or Mpondo bloodlines. Like another family, for instance, would be the Morrisons. They came from Mandiu.
Yes.
and then there would be the Mets as well and the Smalls as well. They were found maybe Flagstaff side or Bizana side.
Yes.
And then the Gananas came
Alright.
from Uma.
Yeah. Continue.
Oh, the Gananas came from Umaposhwa. Umaposhwa was from Butterworth location. And then, the first kingdom, I think if you read the book before, The Sunburnt Queen, that will give you more context about the families that lived in that time. I think in the 1850s,
Yes.
I believe. Yes.
Yeah.
But we'll get
Amazing.
more into detail into that at some point.
Yeah. No, thank you. I you know what? It's crazy, man, that this country has such a bad history. Such a very bad history, a sad history, because some of these people were used in wars. And I'm not even talking about wars of invasion, where they're taking land. Some of these people were used in like world wars, World War One, World War Two. These European descendants, colored people, black people, whatever, it doesn't matter. They were used in these wars and they didn't get any benefits. When you once shared, I think some years back, that article of your great grandfather who fought in the war, and then when he came back, he was stripped of all benefits. It reminded me of the story of the native soldiers of South Africa, most of whom were actually Xhosa, who went with the ship SS Mendi and died in the ship SS Mendi, drowned in the ship SS Mendi. And not even to this day did their families get any kind of compensation. So for me, there's also that aspect of South African history, besides the original sin of taking the land and committing genocide. There's these other things that kept on just happening, like gross injustices. Gross injustice. So thank you so much, Imani. I wanna read here quickly. This you shared with me. The Strachans came to Lusigisigi about the same time. Well, I can't see properly now. The father of Dudley traded in Lusigisigi district. When he died, he was buried in St. Andrew's Mission Churchyard. He was an upright old gentleman after returning from service. After returning from the service. You can read that. It's a written account. It's a written account of the stories that we talk of. Nah, it's all right, brother Lee. It's all right, my brother, man. It's gonna take too much time. I wanna move. But this is the crazy thing, you know. People were used to fight the battles of Europeans. People were promised things when they were fighting. You know, most of the natives went to fight, thought that perhaps by fighting, it would buy them favor with the British and the Dutch. They really thought that, okay, maybe if I fight for them, they're gonna hate me less. If I fight for them, they're gonna mistreat me less. No, they did not mistreat you because you didn't fight. They mistreated you because you existed. So that was even like a bad premise to begin with anyway. That was the wrong premise to begin with anyway. So we also have to understand this now as the descendants of these people, that there's so much that still needs to be uncovered. We have not even begun to scratch the surface. We have not even begun to scratch the surface. I'm going to share another group of European descendants. My brother Lee, please change the view to that original one. This one right here is a member of the Ama Irish. These people are known as Ama Irish. This black man, dark-skinned, he's called a member of the Ama Irish people. Can you believe it? Like my brother Imani, the one who just left now, his ancestors were Irish people. There were many Irish who came to South Africa. The Roscrouge were Irish. No, the man on the screen is from the Eastern Cape, literally. He's an Irish descendant from the Eastern Cape. Not just from SA, from Eastern Cape, deep in the villages. So I'm calling your attention on these nuances of our history. Because I remember when I went to school, when I went to primary school, maybe even high school, I don't remember. There was a guy there who had an English surname, Saunders. I was wondering, why does this guy have an English surname? Now, we must always understand the nuances when we talk about history. Not everyone who has an English surname was a slave. In fact, a lot of people who have English surnames were English descendants. Most people who have English surnames are English descendants. I'm mentioning the Spaldings, I'm mentioning the Smalls, I'm mentioning the Balms, I'm mentioning the Browns, I'm mentioning the Greens. I'm talking about, there was a news reporter called Vuyani Green on SABC News. Vuyani Green. He was a Xhosa news reader. He was Green. That's his surname. Those are European English descendants. So we always have to understand now. Sometimes it boggles my mind when people talk about this group identity. People always boggle my mind when they talk about group identity. Oh, the Xhosa are like this. But what is the Xhosa? What is the Zulus? You say, oh, the Zulus are like this, but what is that? What do you mean? Do you also include the children of Jordan and Ogles and Canes? Do you also include the descendants of Indians within the Zulu community? Do you also include the descendants of, Arabs? When you talk about groups, what are you talking about? Because you need to understand the groups are falsified linguistic, groups. We are just speaking the same language. But then if you drill deep into the clans, there are clans that we can call abantwana bomthonyama or bomdabu, which means the bloodline clans. And then there are clans, which is sometimes the majority. They are just clans because they are part of the kingdom, but they are not necessarily blood descendants. Not necessarily blood descendants. It's literally how kingdoms are built. That's why even the whole notion of nations, we are the Xhosa nation, no, we are the Zulu nation. It's false. We are not nations, Tina. We are Izizwe, Dichaba. Izizwe, Dichaba, Tive. Which means we are polities that are based on allegiance to kings or head rulers. Because the moment we start to take European words and attach them to our ways of life, already we lose the plot. This is how people are racist to each other nowadays. All of them non-white, Mara, the one, we know we are the first nation. No, you are not even a nation to begin with. Let alone the first. You are not even a nation. It's literally just a bunch of people that are living. And that's it. No, we are first nation. We had an emperor so-and-so, let's see. I'm like, emperor? Since when now do we have emperors? Come on, man. But all these things thrive when people are misinformed. All these lies thrive when people are misinformed, when people are unknowing. It's easy to manipulate people who don't know nothing. It's so easy because then I can just lie, and people take advantage of that and lie. There are many liars there online posing as content creators. They're lying and throwing our people off. They're throwing our people off. So this man here is from the Irish people. These are Irish descendants. So his specific bloodline comes from the Beresford people. In fact, his surname is Beresford. You can see there a bit. His surname is literally Beresford. They come from Beresford, the original Nicholas. I think it's Nicholas Beresford. I'm not sure. But anyway, their original father was a man called Beresford. He gave birth to 4 sons. The first son was John Beresford. The second one was Maish Beresford, and then Sam Beresford and Masona Beresford. And then John Beresford gave birth to Nicholas. Sam gave birth to Monde. Both Nicholas Beresford and Monde Beresford. This man you see here is Nicholas Beresford. Literally, a Irish descendant. Dark-skinned Irish descendant, albeit still an Irish descendant. You see how we don't say, no, he's a black man or he's a white man. No, we're saying he's an Irish descendant because his blackness or whiteness is immaterial when we talk about bloodline. Even if he was green, he would still be an Irish descendant. Even if he was purple, he would still be an Irish descendant. It's futile. So he comes from a group of people known as Irish, the Irish people. But it's not just the Ama Irish. We also have another group known as Ama France. We have another group known as Ama France. You see this one, Mr. Dukuza here. He comes from a group of people known as Ama France. Their oldest ancestor is someone called Charlie, I guess. I don't think they know properly the lineage, but their oldest ancestor is a man called Charlie, who gave birth to Dukuza, who gave birth to Mvikelwa, and Nyendaba and Enoch. And then Vigelwa himself gave birth to 3 sons. Actually, 4 sons. Nyendaba gave birth to 2 sons. Or no, 1 son, I guess. And then the other. Basically, their ancestor is a man called Charlie. He was a Frenchman. He was a Frenchman. That's why they are called Ama France. Now, people would say, why do Xhosa people have names like this? Or Noma Russia? Or no Moscow? You understand? Noma Russia, no Moscow, Noma India. I remember there was a woman called Noma India Mfeketo when I was young. Noma India Mfeketo. And one of the queens of Abatembu was called No Moscow. Moscow being the capital city of Russia. Sometimes this name are just because maybe the king had traveled to Moscow that month, or maybe the child looks Indian, so they call them Noma India. But sometimes it comes from real bloodline. Like a descendant of this man who comes from the Ama France, the child could be called Noma French, literally. Within the people known as Ama Mpondomise, I know one lady called Noma Mpondomise. She's older than me. I grew up, she was a neighbor. Her name was Noma Mpondomise. So the same is used then when they name people, you know. In fact, there are many other names, weird names from the 1900s. Noma, no Finnish, no Kariot. That was my grandmother's name. From that was given to her by the husband. No Kariot. You understand? So there's this heritage that is uncovered, you know, that is covered, sorry, untouched. Many people don't know about it, and they speak ill and ill-informed. They speak based on from a place of ignorance when they talk. I know, why do you have English surnames? You are colonized. No, Baba. These people are French. These people are Irish. These people are Germans. We've got the people of the Goss people as well, who are also Irish descendants. We've got people known as Ongesi. Ongesi, come on, man. Gesi, it literally means English. English. Abantu bakwangesi. It means the English people. So my people, these are things we need to be always aware of. Brother Limakara, I'm going to give you a chance to talk, ne? But I just wanted to introduce this topic, guys. There's nothing much. I just wanted to introduce it. After this live, I'm going to do another live later tonight. I'm going to go a bit crazy on that one. I'm going to talk about the wars of resistance. But I'm going to talk about wars you never heard of. The 19 wars of resistance, which took more than 220 years. I'm going to start it from 1510 all the way. So I want you guys to tune in. I'm going to do the wars of resistance in South Africa. You're going to hear names you've never heard before. You're going to see images you've never seen before. And this is how and where we begin to actually really claim what is ours. Please join. I'm going to host this later around 10. Brother Lee, come on in, Muren. I have an appointment, guys. That's why I'm going to drop now. I have another appointment. Come on, Muren. Talk to us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madume. Greetings to everyone. Minamkulu, I wanted to attest on when you were talking about the world wars. Some of our people were actually used, you know, and I don't know if a lot of people know that because Minavede
Yes.
he actually didn't go to the war because he literally broke his arm. So that yeah, so that, and I'm here to tell the story. So if he went, he
Yes.
probably would have come back as a corpse. So yeah, no, I can attest to that because yeah, yeah, he was known as someone who was very stubborn and a fighter. Yeah, well, so I wanted to
Yes.
send
Yes.
him, and I was like, no, I've got my own plans. Yeah, I just wanted to attest on that. But thank you very much for sharing this information. Very vital.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, man, and thank you guys for logging in. I know this one is going to be quicker than normal, but we don't have to always go for 5 hours. We don't have to always go for 5 hours. It's Friday today, so I also need to take care of some business. But I'll be back later tonight, and I promise you, we're gonna go crazy. We're gonna talk about war. We're gonna talk about war. Impi siyalwa. Thank you, my people. Kusandile lona ngohlathi ngujambase. Nguzaba lona umfene mazabiwe zabelwe abafokazi. Ndingundlazana mna. Ndingusidunsa. Ndinguyibekela ityeni ityezi imbovane. Ndingungube emhlophe. Ndingubhorhom. Ndingumfene ezimabutho ahlukana xa kutshona ilanga. Ndinguluncu umwandla umando wafikela uhlangeni. Uhlaba mkhosi, ndingubha mkhosi. NdinguwakwaMayikana, ndinguwakwaVibisa, ndinguwakwarhwala emkudleni. Ndinguwakwageqa amatye, ndiwakwapheka iphemphem neqhakupa ngengqawana. Ndithi camago. Thank you guys. Thank you guys.